Hi, I'm Bec and I'm a property investor.
And I'm Darya. I own my own home and I'm curious about investing.
We're the hosts of Investors in the Wild.
We've heard it all before. Build your wealth, get expert advice, learn about high yield, high growth investments, blah, blah, blah.
That's just not us. We're real mates with real talk about real estate. No ego, no financial advice.
It's all about wins you can use right now.
Let's get into it. Hello. Today we are chatting with Hayder. He's an Olympian turned lawyer who now runs a national legal practice helping everyday Australians to navigate everything from property purchases to family law. Now, he has seen what happens when things go sideways on a purchase, and he's here to help us not be that person. It's a really fun conversation. Let's get the party started. Hayder, welcome to the podcast. Do you want to tell us about yourself and your firm?
Thanks for having me on the show. I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, and my parents from a mixed background, it's more common now, but back then not very common, so fairly unique. My mum's Japanese and my father's from Iraq. So
wow.
very mixed back then. It was very, very rare. I didn't know any growing up, so always a little bit difficult to fit in. So it was just our little pod that was based out here. Classic kids of migrant story. All of us had to work really hard. As part of that kind of identity crisis, I forged my own path through sport. I started off with Taekwondo, which created my whole first arc of my life, which was competing internationally and then going to the Olympics in 2016. And then opening up my law practice a few months after finishing the Olympics. Originally, it started in Sydney. Did well there, and then I went on a series of acquisitions a few years ago, purchasing other practices and putting it all under one umbrella. Now we're a national brand with practices all across the eastern coast. It's the Justice Network, and we have teams all across the eastern coast of Australia covering all sorts of laws. We provide resources of a national size firm, but also a local and boutique approach. That's really important to me, to give support to everyday Australians. And that's something that we do on a daily basis. We support thousands of Australians every year. It could be purchasing their first property. It could be helping them through their divorce. It could be assisting them if they got in trouble with the police. It could be suing their builders because they've done a bad job on their building site. The range of different services we provide is really broad. At the end of the day, we're a group of teams that support local Australians, and we empower those teams through the resources that we have as a national brand now.
What are the most common traps people fall into when it comes to property investment that they might not have been aware of legally?
Yeah, there's hundreds of different things that people need to be aware of when they're doing property investments. From a legal perspective, there's, I guess, two sides that most people need advice around, and that would be the legal side of things and then the accounting side of things. And kind of those lines blur fairly often. So as an example, let's talk about negative gearing, okay, which is an accounting concept, but it's also a law. And with the current climate at the moment, when people are talking about negative gearing, they're talking about changing the laws around negative gearing. And that affects you in two different ways. It affects you from a legal perspective and also from the accounting perspective. Quite often when we're giving advice, although we're not giving accounting advice, people are asking questions around that. And so we have to give them some kind of explanation so that people understand their investing journey. When it comes to purchasing property, it depends a lot on which state people are purchasing in as well. Every state has its own rules, its own nuances. Simple things like deposits, how they work, when you're fighting over a deposit. When you're purchasing a property initially, normally you have to put down an amount. It could be a whole range of different scenarios. You could be putting down 0.25% of the purchase price, which is to secure the property and take it off the market. That's a common practice in New South Wales. Sometimes then it might be 5% of the purchase price. It might be 10% of the purchase price. Sometimes it can just be a fixed amount. So in some states, they'll be like, put down $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is. and that's considered your deposit. Everyone understands what a deposit is. It's a little payment that you're paying prior to you settling the property and paying the full amount. So I think everybody understands what that is, but very few people understand what happens when you get into a dispute and what happens to your deposit then. Once you pay that money, it's no longer in your account. But how often do you think about what happens if I don't want to proceed? What happens if I do a building and pest inspection, and as a result of the building and pest inspection, there's defects in the property, and because of that, I want to pull out? Then what happens to your deposit? So those kinds of questions are normally really big problems because they're scenarios that people don't think about. They just think, oh, I'm going to pay this deposit and it's going to go to my purchase price and just securing it. But then as the job of a lawyer, you always have to be asking, what if things go wrong? What if it doesn't go out the way that you're expecting it?
Fun fact, I've actually had that happen. Years ago, I was selling a place in Campbelltown, actually. So it was a lower price point and they'd put a 0.25 deposit. So I don't remember exactly, but it was less than $5,000. I remember thinking it's not a huge amount of money. And the people put an offer in, I accepted it. They put down the 0.25%. And then for some reason, I don't know why, they pulled out of the purchase and they asked for the money back. And I didn't give it back. I was like, no, like I've got to launch a new marketing campaign. Like that's going to be another 10 grand. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. This is, and I remember talking to my lawyers then and being like, where does the law stand on this? And she was like, it's your money. That's very clear that they sign when they're giving that money over. But I imagine if it's bigger amount of money, Hayder, that it'd probably be more of a fight on people's hands. If it's a larger property.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So in that scenario, that 0.25%, which was that nominal sum that they put forward, that's paid to take the property off the market. And so that's what would have happened in that situation. And if they pull out after that point, then they lose those funds. That's what it says under the contract. It's automatically lost. So it will straight away go to you. So if they can request it back, but you have complete power and control there normally to keep that for yourself.
Yeah. Have you mentioned that there can be disputes over that. Is there an example of a time where you've seen this go really haywire and it's worth launching a legal dispute? Because the legal dispute's going to cost money. And so I'm assuming there are much bigger amounts and much more complicated cases where it does make sense for a would-be buyer to be like, no, I'm going to try and get that deposit back.
It does. You're right. Like normally the amount doesn't really justify going to court for. Once you go to court, you're talking at a minimum $10,000. That's at a minimum, and cost can escalate very quickly. So 10K is the floor, but typically you'd probably see costs between 20 to 40K. When you start talking about that and arguing over deposit, normally the lawyers will be like, look, let's be reasonable. If the deposit's worth this and there's a huge dispute, maybe it gets split. Maybe someone puts forward strong enough arguments to argue that it should be kept with the vendor or with the purchaser. All of those things, are up for discussion really, and it's about who presents their best arguments at that time.
Yeah. So it feels like the lesson here is if and when you put down that deposit, you need to be sure that you're going to be going ahead with the purchase, because you could be foregoing that deposit if there's a curveball in the building and pest inspection, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Just always think of it when the money's out of your account and it's in somebody else's account, it's not very easy to recover. Okay. That's the way you've got to think of it. As soon as it leaves your account, then you lose control really. And then when you start arguing over it in that situation that you just mentioned, the vendor has more control because it's not in the purchaser's account. They're the one that needs to refund it. They need to do a positive action here. So you need to force them to make that positive action. Otherwise, they can just retain it. So, it's always good to be ready. But I would say it also depends on each state. So it does change, and certain states are a little bit more flexible around it. New South Wales, with that 0.25, it's pretty firm.
Quick gold nugget here. The money you put down to secure a property, it's not just a formality. If things go sideways, it can be gone. And for that reason, and obviously every situation is unique, and this is not financial or legal advice, but sometimes it can be helpful to do the building and pest inspections and the strata due diligence before you put down your deposit in case anything does come up. I know that's easier said than done, and sometimes you just get caught up in the heat of the moment, but if you want to protect yourself, it's potentially the safest option.
Are there state agnostic issues, like national issues that arise that basically end up in a scenario where it would result in a dispute that are most common in your experience in the property realm? So in my head, I'm thinking things like property disputes over like prenups and post-nups, or I think the deposit one's a good one that I hadn't considered at all, because I was what you said, laissez-faire. Yes, I'll secure the house and pay the deposit.
Yeah. Because when you're in the moment, you're caught up in emotions, right? Like when it comes to purchasing. And that's the thing. That's always a big thing, whereas I want this property. I've spent so long looking for other properties. I found the one. This is the one.
Exactly.
I need to take it off the market. And the agent's there and they're like pushing you along. And they're like,
Yes,
you've got to take it off the market. I've got 3 other people that are interested. If you want it, you've got to secure it now. And you start getting emotional. And then, you just, okay, I need to take it off the market. I need to pay the money. So, yeah, it can escalate very quickly. And and to your point about state agnostic issues, one major problem that happens across the board is when it comes to settlement. So let's say you've signed the dotted line on the contract, you pay the deposit. Normally there's a waiting period between when you purchase the property and when you're actually going to settle on the property. Settlement meaning you pay the balance of all of the funds and the property title gets transferred into your name. That happens simultaneously at a set date on a set time. Okay. And that happens all electronically through the conveyancing platforms that we now use. So it's all done seamlessly. I've been practicing law for more than 10 years now. And when I first started, one of my first roles as a paralegal was to do settlements in person. And that was a crazy time, really. And when I think back, I just laugh because the format was unbelievable. All of the parties that were involved when it came to settling. I'll put this out there. How many parties do you think are involved when it comes to a settlement? Any idea, Bec, Darya?
it feels like 2, but 3, because then you've got the lawyers involved. Wait, the actual parties would be the buyer and the seller. They're the key
Buyer, seller,
parties.
bank, maybe land title, registry.
Yeah.
So 4 maybe?
Yeah. So normally there's an incoming bank and there's an outgoing bank.
Oh, yeah.
So then you've got 2 banks normally. Yeah. So when you're settling on the property, normally there's a mortgage on the property.
Yeah.
And the bank needs to be involved with the whole transaction, right? If you're selling the property, the bank wants to be like, okay, you're selling this property, you're selling it for $1 million, okay? And there's a mortgage still there of $600,000 as an example, okay? We're only going to sign off on the sale if we get paid out our mortgage at the same time as you receive the balance of your funds. So when you settle, we want a check for $600,000 and you get a check for $400,000. This is back, but now it's just obviously EFT transfers, $600,000, $400,000. A bunch of other people normally get paid as well. It might be Sydney Water Services or electricity bills or whatever. But when it comes to settlement, really, when it comes to the major people that are involved, it's the purchaser, the seller, the purchaser's bank, and the seller's bank. Okay, unless there's no mortgages involved, happens. But the most common kind of scenario is there's 2 banks involved. And why I'm saying that is because when we used to settle without having these electronic workspaces, which we've now moved to, we used to say, okay, we're going to settle, we're going to this address, we're going to this settlement room facility. It's at 2:00, okay, and on this day. And so everyone would go to that same place physically, and you'd get there, and there'd be 100 people or 200 people in the room. And everyone would have all of their documents. So you'd have your title deed, which is still physical paper in form. If you were selling, this was my title deed as a seller. This is where it lists details of the property. It's got my name on it and all that kind of stuff. And then as a purchaser, you would go and you'd have your checks ready to go so that they're paying all the right people. And there'd also be a whole bunch of other legal documents, transfer documents and things like that. And you would then walk around the room and you would look for the people that were involved in settlement because you don't really know who these people are. As an example, if selling to Darya, then you would walk around and you'd be like, anyone in the matter of Bec and Darya, Bec and Darya, and you go around shouting in
Sounds
the
like
room.
the markets.
Yeah, it was literally like a market. I'm not even exaggerating. It was like a marketplace. Anyone here for Bec and Darya? Bec and Darya. And so you'd be like, and they'd be like, me over there, and then you'd run over, and then you'd go to that person, like, okay, cool. Have you got the checks? Yeah, I've got the transfer documents here. Cool. And they'd be like, okay, where's the bank? So you'd be like, okay, I'm with NAB, so you have to go to the NAB guy over there, and you have to go to the CBA guy over there, and they'd be like, okay, are you happy with this? And then there'd be a representative from NAB, and they'd check all the documents, and then they'll make sure everything's all right. Then they sign off on it. Then you go to the other bank, and they'll check their documents. They'll sign off on it. Okay, cool. Everything in order. Then you start swapping all the paperwork. And then if everything was in order, you'd be like, great, settled. If it wasn't, then you'd be like, I'm missing this document, or this is not signed properly, or whatever it is. We can't settle today. We need to come back tomorrow or next week or whatever. That was the whole kind of settlement process. This is maybe it changed 9 years ago, I think. But before it was done physically. Now it's done all electronically online. No one has to go to a room. It's just more clicking buttons and things get approved and it's like things get shuffled along, and then at settlement, bang, your title name changes to the purchaser and the money gets delivered as well to all the right people. So it's a very different system now. Okay, so I went on a bit of a tangent. I digress. And I'll bring it back, which is, I guess, the problem of what's a common problem that happens, and that is settlement gets delayed. Okay. For whatever reason, you can't settle on a particular day, meaning if the settlement was scheduled for today at 12 o'clock, and a common problem that I'll put out there is the bank is not ready.
The bank isn't ready.
Yeah, so that's like a common problem.
Ready?
For example, Bec, in this situation, you're selling to Darya, and Darya, you're like, okay, today's the day. I'm ready to move in. I've got the removal list. This literally does happen all the time. And the property should settle today at 12 o'clock. I'm going to get the keys from the agent at 12:30. It's all organized. The van's packed with all the stuff. Okay, cool. And so you're just sitting there. It's 9 o'clock in the morning and you're getting all your things ready. You know your settlement's listed at 12 o'clock today, so you're getting it all ready. And then it gets to 12 o'clock and then you get a call from your lawyer, and your lawyer just says, the bank's not ready, you haven't been able to settle. And you're thinking, what the hell does that mean? It might be the case that they haven't got all of the documents that they need prepared properly, and therefore there's a delay in getting your funds ready to finalize the purchase. Because I assume in this hypothetical one, you're purchasing with a bank. So the bank needs to, your bank loan, whatever the portion of your bank loan is, needs to be paid to the vendor. And if the funds aren't ready, then the vendor is not going to settle on the property. The seller is not going to settle on the property. So that means you can't settle today. That means your removalist.
But whose fault would that not be? There's someone, either the lawyer or not the lawyer, but the conveyancer. There's someone's role is to make sure that everything's in order so that the bank's ready, right? To get the forms and the documents.
Can I give you an example? This whole conversation is becoming very triggering, but this has happened to me too.
Okay, I'll let you answer.
Hayder, I'd be really interested in hearing your take, because I feel like this happens more frequently than my scenario. I made a purchase. I was purchasing with a partner, and we purchased, I want to say it was mid-December, settlement at the end of January. The problem with that specific time of year is banks are on skeleton staff, the lawyers were on holiday. The lawyers got back a week before settlement. Because I was purchasing with a partner and we weren't married, we were getting a particular kind of loan where two people can purchase together and be each other's guarantors. So we had the complication of an unusual type of loan that the broker wasn't used to and that the bank didn't do very frequently. Then lots of people in the bank were on leave. The broker was on leave and the lawyers were on leave. And we ended up in a scenario where a week before settlement, the broker comes back from leave and your lawyers aren't back for another 2 days. They're going to be back a few days before settlement. So they've got to get ready and the bank's still got to get ready. And we had removalists planned. So we were very much in this scenario where I was like, no. We need to settle on this day, because I've got removalists coming in the afternoon. We're cleaning the place that we're leaving the next day, and then there are tenants moving in the day after that. So there is zero room for margin of error here. And we were very close to missing settlement, I went into like crazy Karen mode and was just calling everyone stalking and being like, settlement must happen. I remember calling the lawyer and being like, there is absolutely no way this settlement can be missed. You have to get this over the line. But it could have easily, if not everyone is as comfortable being a pest as what I am, but it could have easily been missed. And it was
I think it's
plenty of
also
people's
people
fault.
don't know they're supposed to be the pest. Like you just think that
You don't?
everything's in order, that it's taken care of themselves. If you tell me, Daria, you need to be the pest, I'll be the pest. I'll happily be the pest. But I just assume that people who are more knowledgeable than me have this under control and that someone's like taken care of business. So,
Is that what people think,
whose
Hayder?
role was it, Beck? So is it the people who are
I
involved?
always
Is it
assume I
their
have to be the
responsibility?
pest. No, I
I like
always
that.
assume I
That's good.
have to be the
You might
pest.
as well. But, yeah.
Daria, no one cares about your money as much as what you do.
But I'd lose hair if I was to worry about everyone else's job. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to go and keratin my own hair because I'm afraid the hairdresser's going to burn it off. Like I've got to trust, at some point, you got to trust the process, right? So who is, so what actually, you know what? Let's get to the end of the story. Hayder,
Yeah,
what's the
and
solution?
We'll hear from Hayder in a second, but I want to just sit with this gold nugget for a minute because Daria said something that I think a lot of people feel but don't say out loud. When you're not the expert, it's really easy to assume that the people who are experts will just handle things. They won't. Not with the urgency that you will. Nobody cares about your money as much as you do. So you need to be the pest and check that things are ready, especially if there are nuances with your purchase, a unique loan type, a unique purchase. We have a playbook coming out soon.
I'll tell you what happens 9 times out of 10. You get to that situation, for example, that Bec was in, and it comes to a day or two before the settlement, and people realise we're not ready, and everyone starts pointing the finger at one another, and no one wants to take the blame because, and everyone starts blaming each other. So I'll tell you, it would be the blame game goes something like this. Bec, and this is Bec, you didn't send me the right documents at the right time when I asked you. Bec will say, no, I did. Here it is, here. And they'll be like, oh, no, actually, you sent it to your mortgage broker, and then maybe your mortgage broker didn't send it to me. I'm going to blame the mortgage broker. The mortgage broker's going to be like, no, I've got it here. And I said, no, you didn't sign it properly. Then the bank will be like, I got it too late, and you need to give me 2 weeks' notice to prepare the funds. I can't just prepare the funds within 3 days. I got it too late. You didn't give it to me in enough time, so it's your fault. And they'll be like, no, we actually sent it to you, bank. We sent it to you 2 weeks ago. Here's the email. You're the one at fault. And so it starts going into a bit of a circle like that. Normally there is one person that's at fault, but everyone will get their backs up and be like, I'm not at fault here because I can blame this person and this person kind of blame that person. But I don't want to scare you, Daria. I don't want to scare everybody. I'm saying you asked me the question, what can go wrong? And so that's why I'm giving you this example of a delayed settlement, which has real world
So what do
consequences.
you do to mitigate this possibility? So what would you then suggest that people don't put all their eggs on the settlement dates basket? Would you suggest then people decide to move
No,
in
I
a
would.
few days later?
No, so the scenario like that Beck gave,
Hmm.
and I think the timeline of it is important, which is December, January. If you're in that period, it's definitely more risk of
Risky.
something going wrong because
Yeah.
you don't know who's going on leave. If it's received by someone at the bank, there's so many moving parts, so many people involved in these processes. And so when people start going on leave, that's when I think things can go astray. So that December, January period is, you got to be cautious around that. But the only advice I could give, like how to avoid that, would be make sure you've got good people that you're using, a good lawyer and a good broker, I think, or
So
bank.
these are the two key stakeholders. I feel
Yeah.
like there's a possibility, like there's an option here for a new job, a role of like paperwork person. And this person is the intermediary between all these bodies to make sure that you've got the right things in place. Like I feel genuinely there feels like there's a gap here that should be met because I could do what Beck does, but most people won't. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so it's just and again, I don't want to be negative Nancy here, but you can't always trust that you're going to have the best quality brokers, conveyancers,
No,
lawyers.
no.
Like, how do you even know who's
That's
who?
right.
And so
It's
it's
hard.
just
It's hard.
Yeah.
All you can go off is recommendations and just check the reviews online. It is important to work with a team that know what they're doing, that have seen. In the example Bec gave, it was like, oh, this is a bit of a different. It wasn't the normal kind of transaction, and that also is okay. There's a slight increase of maybe something going wrong because maybe the conveyancer doesn't know exactly how to deal with this type of transaction. It's not your run of the mill type of transaction. Maybe the bank as well, there might be an issue. Like with it, it's a different type of loan structure. It might be a little bit more complex. And so in those situations, yeah, if you're dealing with somebody that doesn't deal with that stuff all the time, doesn't have the experience, then there can be delays, I guess, with that.
No one.
Worst case scenario is you've got your truck full and you've got like people waiting and then they can't move in that day. That's kind of
Yeah, that's
worst.
right. It does.
Yeah, okay.
Unfortunately does happen. We do our absolute best to make sure that you don't get into that situation. And there are workarounds to ensure that even if there is a delay, I guess, in settlement, can we still get the people in? That's something that
Yeah.
we can negotiate potentially with
Oh,
the other
that's good.
solicitors. So
That's good. That's a good
yeah.
solution.
So on those occasions, we do our best to come up with a solution that works for everyone. And we negotiate things so that it's okay, we're moving in, but it's not this. It's not. So putting parameters around that, I think, is really important. You need a solutions-based lawyer as opposed to a problematic lawyer. That's what I always say. Someone that's focused on coming to a resolution and solving things.
Do we find these on planet Mars? Hey, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you'd be surprised how many lawyers out there are about the ego and about protecting themselves.
Yeah.
And they'll lash out and they'll get aggressive if they feel like they've done something wrong, or if somebody else has done something wrong. They'll start swinging punches as opposed to, hold on, okay, the settlement is not happening today in this situation. People want to still get this. Can we get this other deal done? Now we're starting to negotiate a little side deal as well. Can we get them in? What are the terms? Do they have to do this? Do they have to do that? So, yeah, a resolutions-focused lawyer is really going to be worth your time.
I feel like there are probably a few golden nuggets here. Number one, especially if you're doing settlement over a Christmas, New Year's break, think about the time frame that you're giving yourself for settlement. Give yourself enough time. Number two, you are the pest, embody being the pest. You just have to be the pest to get this done. Or if you can find a person who can push the paperwork for you, great. But I think you need to be the pest. And I feel like, honestly, Darya will share a playbook for pre-purchase experience for people of 6 weeks before settlement. This is what happens. 5 weeks before settlement, you should be doing it. 4 weeks, just so people know. If it's not done 2 weeks before, a week before, you want everyone to be like, yep, this is going to be fine. Then make sure you've got the right team. We've spoken about that a lot. Removalists, be careful having them do the move on the day of settlement. Give yourself some wriggle room. But then I think there's also contingency plans. Like you want, what did you call it, Hayder? A solutions-based lawyer rather than someone who's going to antagonize and inflame the situation.
That's right. Keep it resolution focused, definitely.
I think just a good call out for people is just don't assume someone else is taking care of it. You are the master of your destiny when it comes to settlements. That's a gold nugget for me because I always assume someone else is taking care of it when it's an area that's not my expertise. But you've got to become a bit of a legal property expert when it comes to your property investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one cares about your money as much as what you do. You're not, the lawyers aren't paying the interest if it's delayed a day or a week. The broker isn't. You're the one who pays. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the lawyer probably has 3, 4, 5, 6 settlements on the same day. You've got one in the whole year, or one in 5 years, or one in 10 years. But literally, the lawyer's probably got maybe 5 settlements on the same day, maybe 1, 2, but they've done a few that week. Do you know what I mean? Like Bec's right. No one's going to care about your matter as much as you.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep people accountable and just because everyone's doing their best. It's just that I like that example. Lawyers might have 5, 6 on the same day. And if yours is more complicated, like mine was, that does need a bit more preparation and pestering. Hayder, I'd love to hear a case study. What has been the most expensive mistake that you've seen happen at or after settlement because something hasn't gone according to plan or something hasn't been done properly?
I can give lots of examples. Just think of the one that comes to mind. Yeah, you do get occasional horror stories where people haven't done proper checks prior to settling the property.
That's my worst fear, that one. And when you say proper checks, you mean like pest inspection, structural issues, stuff like that, right? Where then you then regret it and then you've got to, yeah, that's my worst. Because again, you're not the expert in this, and then you've got to trust people who might not necessarily do that. They might be, and we've had separate episodes on this, Hayder, where building inspection teams are affiliated with the real estate agent, so they might not give an objective review of the property, so you've got to go and do your own investigation separately. Just various things that could come up.
I can think of one that comes to mind just in terms of that building and pest. It does happen. I wouldn't say it's very frequent, but it does happen where you've got like large amounts of damage to the property because something was missed in the building and pest. In this scenario, there was real structural problems with the building. We're talking repairs to the floor because the flooring was all off and was old and sagging in certain places. It didn't get picked up, and we're talking at least $100,000 to $200,000 of repairs that needed to be done, and that only gets discovered after settlement. And the reality is, after settlement, you're stuck with what you have. That you can't go back to the vendor and be like, "I didn't know about this." It's buyer beware. So you've got to make sure that you've done your proper checks there. That does happen, but I think a more frequent example and something people should be aware of is, it sounds a bit silly, but you need to know what you're actually purchasing and what's included in the purchase price. Something that we commonly argue over is something like fixtures. What's a fixture? Something that comes with the property. So when you purchase a property, let's go very basic here. Dishwasher. Are you buying the dishwasher as well? If you're purchasing your house and there's a dishwasher in there, is the dishwasher included? Is the washing machine included? Is the dryer included? I know they sound like small things when you come to if you're purchasing a property for $1 million or $2 million, we're talking here $1,000 for a dishwasher or a dryer. But those arguments are much more frequent when it comes to purchases. Because, for example, a purchaser could come in and check the property before settlement and be like, "Where's the dishwasher? How come it's not here?" And then they'll call the agent and be like, "You told me the dishwasher will be included." And so these are the types of fights that we see quite a lot. Yeah. So I would say avoid getting into that situation by at the start clarifying what's included. Is the dishwasher included? Is the microwave included? Is the microwave built into the cabinetry? Because I'm not lying when I say we've had a lot of situations where when you have, for example, those microwaves and they're built into like the wall or the cabinetry.
Yeah. It's integrated. If it's integrated furniture, it's bloody expensive. It's not just a $500 microwave. It needs to be custom. The cover, it's expensive.
Yeah.
A microwave. You don't have a microwave.
Why would you take that with you though, if it's built in?
You get the purchaser that comes and the property's settled, or it's just before settlement, and so the vendor has taken out the microwave, the built-in microwave. And so then it gets into a big dispute as to, no, the microwave's not included. No, it is. No, I'm purchasing the microwave. So you can see how something like that can escalate quite quickly.
Who pays for that? So in the end, so I guess, would that be included in the contract of sale, like to actually spell out everything that's going to be included? And so people are just not including things, and then the customer signing off, and then they just assume. So then they lose.
I would say yes and no. Yes and no about it should be included on the contract. It should. A lot of the times it's overlooked / not really thought about. Then there's an argument as to whether or not it should be included into the purchase price, or the vendor is taking it, or whatever. So those arguments, they can go on for quite a while, and it can really piss people off.
I feel like we're going through a highlights reel of all of the crazy shit. So I've had this happen to me. We were trying to purchase a place, and the seller was wanting more money. And so we said, "Okay, you want more money? What are you going to give for that extra money?" And the seller said, "There's a custom stereo system in the house at the moment. You can have that." And obviously all of this is through the agents at this point. The agent's like, "All right," he's happy to leave the stereo system in there for the extra money. We're like, "Okay, cool, that sounds good." And the agent's, "Cool, so are you going to sign the contract?" "Yeah, cool, we'll sign the contract." The contract comes through, there's no mention of the stereo there. And I would call the agent, hey, you said the stereo is going to be included. That's why we're comfortable giving a bit of extra money. It was one of the inclusions, and the agent's like, hey, like I'm on a boat at the moment. I'm on a boat party. So now it's just not a really easy time for me to amend the contract. So do you just want to sign the contract as it is? And when I'm back in the office, this was a Friday afternoon. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm calling the guy on a Sunday afternoon being like, where's, he's like, so
Beck, you
when I'm
need to
back,
have some respect and not call people on a Friday afternoon or when they're on.
there's like common theme of this podcast. Beck is a pest, actually.
Hashtag bad timing.
And so he's, look, if you just want to sign the contract now, I can fix it up on Monday. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not how contracts work, though. I'm pretty sure what you sign in a contract.
You've signed it, Beck.
I made him, no.
I
I was like, sorry to interrupt your boat party. Please amend the contract. Because Daria, you know what he has to do to amend the contract? He just has to hang up the phone, pick up the phone again, call the lawyer, say, can you just add a box for the stereo? Get the email, forward it to me. That's the most. I'm like, mate, just put your drink down for 2 minutes. I back you. You can do this. Do you know what I mean?
You got it done.
Of course I got it done.
But this is the thing, Beck. You're very good. You're the master of your destiny. Like, you follow through. I can promise you now, I wouldn't have given a flying F about the stereo. I would have not even noticed it. I would have not even noticed it. Do you know what I mean? I'm potentially one of these people who would be like, this is good for me to know, because I'd be like, okay, there'll be no stereo. There'll probably be chandeliers missing when I walk into the house. Like, I'm that person. So I now know that you need to negotiate upfront what's going to be included. And actually, I think that's a really good thing that you did there, Beck, because it sounds like the agent was trying to bump up the price to get you to pay more. And while regular people would just be like, yeah, fine, okay, I need to pay more to get the house, you're like, okay, what am I getting for that payment? And so that's actually a really good negotiation tool to be cognizant of when the agents are asking you for more money, like what fixtures are included. Because I just assume nothing's included. If I'm going into a house, I'm paying just for the building. And I never thought to myself that dishwashers and microwaves, and I just assume everything's going to leave the house, right? So
chandeliers is a good example as well, like light fittings. They can be expensive.
yeah. Well, and chandeliers, I would assume, are coming with the house. It's never something that I would think will go missing if I'm going to purchase a house. Yeah. As you said earlier, Hayder, you go in emotional and you're like, I love this. I want this. You sign it off. You're like, let's get moving. And then suddenly you walk in and there's things that you thought would be included that are not included. So I'd never thought of that. That's really good.
I can give you a more extreme example.
Yes.
Because I'm giving you the common ones. One that we saw recently was whether or not a room was included.
What?
What?
I know, it's so annoying that I'm adding a gold nugget here, lol, but I couldn't help myself. This is a new one that we haven't spoken about, focusing on the inclusions. I know we're laughing about the dishwasher, the microwave, the light fixtures. Hayder's just about to talk about whether the room is included, but these are real disputes that real people end up in and pay real money to have resolved, because people just assumed, but you have to ask exactly what's included and then get it in writing. And this is all a negotiation tool as well. Use inclusions as a lever to add or reduce value depending on where you're at with the price negotiations, obviously. You're going to love the next story. And by the way, one of this podcast's guiding principles is about mateship and helping each other. And so share this podcast with someone, whether it's for a laugh or whether it's so they also know what to look out for when they're working through purchase and contract negotiations. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah, so this room was a special kind of room. It was a container at the back, a shipping container, and they had it at the back of the property, and they converted that shipping container into a room. So just imagine it's like a modular home kind of thing. So it's a modular home, and it was in the backyard, and they converted it into a room, and they used it as a kind of study getaway space that was separate to the home. So it wasn't actually connected to the home. It was a separate thing in the backyard, and there was a dispute as to whether or not it was included.
Wow.
I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts here as to whether or not they think it should be included. It's a container.
It needs to be communicated up front if it's not included, because when you're walking into the backyard, like
Yeah.
when I do property inspections, there are so many granny flats. I'm just assuming it's included because it's on the land that I'm buying. And especially if it looks like like a house, I just would definitely think it's included. So I think it's the agent's responsibility to communicate very clearly when you're doing the inspection that it's not included, so a good agent would, and then, yeah, I guess you'd be checking the contract to see that it's included, like plus a granny flat.
Yeah, I feel like I could maybe get caught up on this because you would never say to yourself, is the shed included? Maybe you need to. I don't know. This conversation's making me second guess myself, but I would never guess.
Never would. Yeah, you never would assume, right?
You never would.
The shed's always included. Garage is included. But I bet you're going to say it wasn't included, and because it was a shipping container and not a fixture or not a part of, I don't know. What happened? What happened?
Yeah. Or like the way you guys are thinking in terms of running through the different scenarios and comparisons and the questions, all kind of very logical. And that's exactly the kind of process that we go through. In terms of, there's a big difference between a garage and a shed. A shed can sometimes not be included in the purchase price. And sometimes some sheds are quite valuable. So that's important to understand as well, because some people want to keep their sheds. It might be a fairly expensive one.
Can I ask you something then? Why on earth, if they're not included, would you be doing a tour of the shed? Should that not be locked up then and closed off so that you can't walk through it and get tempted by it? Like, why get people who are coming into the house? So I think if you've set foot in it, you own it. That's it. Otherwise, don't show me the shed that I'm not going to own. Don't show me the shipping container that is not going to be mine. Yeah. Why did I walk through it? Why did I inspect it? Why did I waste my time? Do you know what I mean? So I feel like from a legal perspective, there would be a case, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just assuming that if it was included in the inspection, then you're going to have it included. It's not a light bulb. It's not a stereo. It's a living space, basically.
Yeah. No, they're all good points. And of course, we're talking about residential here, but it starts to become a little bit more blurred, for example, more rural property.
Even so, lock it up. If I'm not buying it, then lock it up so I don't see it. Like, why show it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be the case that it's just on the property. When you're doing inspections, it's just there, so you're just viewing it. And you're right, a good agent should point out if there are specific exclusions like that.
That's a really good point though, Hayder, because now you've actually turned our minds to the fact that it's probably something you need to double check, because we know that some agents are great, some agents are not. So we can't, again, we own our destiny. No one cares about your money as much as you. So you've actually got to have the foresight to ask these questions. Is this shed included? For example, I went and inspected a property and there was a chicken coop next to a granny flat that they'd built out, and the agent was very clear the chicken coop's not included. And I was like, thank God for that, because no one got time. Please take the chicken coop and the smell and everything that comes with it. So that was not included, which great. There was a time though I did a property inspection, which was really funny, where they had two separate living spaces, and then in one, and it was promoted as one had 4 bedrooms, one had 3, and then a kitchenette. A kitchen in the main space and a kitchenette in the other space. And then my family rocks up to view the part, and we've gone through the second part of the house and we're like, where's the kitchenette? And the agent's, oh yeah, we're really sorry, but the owner took the kitchenette with them. Who does that? Like, why would you do that? And also, why are you promoting it then? Cross it off. Don't promote it. So they would even go to the extent of actually advertising something that's not included. So you really can't trust anyone. You've actually got to then double check, whip out your pen and list and be like, okay, where's the kitchenette? There it is. Where's the granny flat? There it is. It's quite a heavy burden, this property investing journey. And actually, you guys are turning me right off. Let's go.
No, we don't want to. We don't want to discourage. We don't want to discourage. And again, it sounds like it's all doom and gloom over here, but the vast majority of transactions, really, they go ahead and it's all good.
I love that shed example. That's really
Yeah.
good because, again, I learned something. I never thought to ask about things that you just can't assume. You can't assume.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, no one cares about your money as much as what you do. So you've got to check that whatever you want is on that contract.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You mentioned it a moment ago, Hayder, of buyer beware. I'd love to hear a bit more about this and maybe give us an example of where you've been like, no, this is buyer beware. So actually, you are responsible for this.
Yeah. So yeah, this concept runs across most purchases that you have, and that is the responsibility of the buyer to do their own due diligence and checks on the property. Or most purchases goes to a car or any kind of major purchase. And once you settle on that, once you finalize and the payment's all done and the transfer's all done, then I would say 99% of the time, there's no possibility of going back and saying, hey, you didn't tell me about this, or now there's a problem with this. I should be reimbursed or compensated. Again, I go back to once the money's left your account or left the account of your bank for your loan, then it's always going to be harder to recover. You've lost control over those funds. And so to then go back and say, oh, I thought this was included, or there's now a problem with the roof, it's leaking, and I didn't pick up on that in my pre-settlement checks. I need to be compensated for that. It's all over basically once you've settled. If you get there and you notice those things before the settlement period or before the settlement date, then of course there's discussions to be had. So in that same scenario where you've got a leaking roof, let's say a pre-settlement check finds out that there's an issue with the roof, then you've got potential at that point to go back and be like, look, there's a problem with the roof here. Potentially we can negotiate on the price, or there's something that can be done, or can you patch it up before settlement? And that's something that could be negotiated. The vendor might turn around and say, stuff you, I don't need to do that. This is the property, this is as it is. You've still got to proceed on the purchase. So yeah, but at least you've got something, you can do something before settlement. But once it settles, that magical time on that magical day, which is settlement day, then if it settlements at 12 o'clock and it settles, and at 12:01 you notice that leak, then I wouldn't even bother calling your lawyer. It becomes really hard. You can call them just to confirm that you can't do anything about it, but most times you can't.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's a harsh world out there in the world of property. We've been in scenarios where I've gone into an auction, and on the day of the auction, there was like this father and son, and they were running through the house flushing the toilets. Like, okay. And so they were waiting till the very last minute just to double check.
They'll check the toilet, they'll check the flush,
Yeah.
they'll check the lights, they'll check the electricity, check the power's running, things like that. People do just to make sure that everything's functioning as it should be.
Yeah.
I know an investor friend who will take a hairdryer to the house before buying and just check that all of the electricity sockets work.
Yeah.
That's wild. If one doesn't work, then what does this friend do? Do they just think, right, I don't want this house, or
No.
I'm going to pay 10K less because
It's a negotiation ploy. It's like,
I
all
love
right,
it.
well, you want me to buy this
It's
place?
wild.
I'm gonna have to pay $1,000 for an electrician. So either you fix it or I want a deduction. And it's a hairdryer, I think. I think she uses the hairdryer Hayder because it's like almost like a psychology thing, because obviously the agent's following, and the agent, it's like you hear it, you know, yes, that's working. Yes, it's working. Yes, it's working.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, because it depends on which model you have, but the higher level models, no, genuinely, they require more voltage. So actually, when I take my hairdryer doesn't work in Japan. My hairdryer doesn't work in the US because their electrical requirements are different. So it's very important to hair that you have the right hairdryer. And if your sockets aren't going to support that level, then it's game over.
I don't want to live there.
Exactly. I'm out.
This is even more important why you have to test to make sure the hairdryer works before you buy
Let's
it.
add it to the list, Beck. The hairdryer.
Yes.
Hairdryer test.
Tick of approval.
Yeah.
But this is why you've got to test the toilet, because I got a place once, and when I was we were doing the pre-settlement inspection. And at that point, I was like, all right, let's just check the taps are working. I went to use one of the taps and the bloody tap fell off.
Oh.
Fell off.
Yeah.
It wasn't attached. I looked at the agent and I was like, this has to be repaired. We're settling in a couple of days. And she was like, no, it was like that during the inspections.
Yeah.
And because I hadn't picked it up beforehand, all right, I guess I'm going to have to organize a plumber, organize a new tap, pay for that. Because I wasn't like the guys that you were talking about, Daria, who were checking everything before the purchase.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think to do that. I'd rather pay the money later than to go and check yeah.
Now, I love the stories that Hayder, Daria, and I are laughing about now, because it's, it sounds funny. Check the taps, bring the hairdryer. But it's also really good advice. Once that settlement goes through, you're on your own. You pay for everything from here on in. So do the checks, ask the awkward questions before you even place an offer, because once that contract is signed, you are out of levers that you can pull to negotiate that price. Buyer beware came up in an episode where KJ and Daria interviewed me on my investing experiences. I have 2 horror stories on buyer beware. If you want to listen, it's episode 18. As horrific as that experience was, those experiences actually got me started talking to investors, because I couldn't believe that such bad things could happen. And because of buyer beware, I'd be responsible for picking up the pieces. Listen to episode 18. It could save you a lot of money and hassles. Before we wrap, I want to recap on the gold nuggets that I've taken out of this conversation. Number 1, be sure when you're putting down a deposit and the money leaves your account, you're basically left with what you're left with. So be sure before you put down that deposit. Settlement, lots of things to consider. Make sure you've got enough of a time frame to meet settlement. Be the pest. No one cares about your money as much as what you do. Make sure you've got good people, a good lawyer, a good broker. Be careful when scheduling your removalist, and make sure you've got a solutions-based lawyer who isn't going to antagonize a situation when things go wrong. Be the pest. I've written that twice. Be clear on the inclusions that are in the contract and what you're going to get out. Shipping container, dishwashers, microwaves, the whole lot. Buyer beware. You're going to get what you're stuck with at settlement, so no upfront. Get the pest and building inspections done.
Your Instagram handle is Hayder_legal, HAYDER_legal, and you share a lot of really short, sharp, interesting tidbits on your Instagram. Bite-sized content that can really help people in their family law, including property decision-making processes. Thank you for your time. I've learned so much, honestly, and I love these episodes when I come out learning a bunch of new stuff. Keep your eye on the shipping container, people. It's
Thank you, guys. It's been a great chat, and I think listeners got some benefit out of it. If they've got any questions, of course, you can reach out to me and my team. Follow me on my socials. There's a huge knowledge gap out there, and I'm just trying to do my small part in terms of filling that knowledge gap, because that knowledge, it will, I hope, lead to better decisions that you can make, and ultimately it can prevent problems happening down the future. So that's my goal in life.
I love
fabulous.
it. Thank you again for your time,
Thank
Hayder.
you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
See
I
you
appreciate
later.
it.
Bye.
Catch you later. Bye.
And that's a wrap for Haydar's first episode. How fun was he? We have another episode coming up with Haydar on binding financial agreements, i.e., what happens to assets in the event of a breakup. You're going to love it even more if you can believe it. See you soon.